Welcome to Reformed Thinking.
It is great to be here for another deep dive.
Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there is this expectation of precision. It feels like engineering.
Right, very clinical.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points and says, there it is binary. Broken or not broken.
Yes, it is a clean process. We like things to be visible. We like them to be categorized neatly in a file.
But then you step into the world of internal spiritual reality, and suddenly that x-ray machine is just useless. We are looking at a diagnostic landscape that is honestly terrifyingly murky.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we cannot measure the corruption of the human heart with a blood test. That tension, that sudden realization that our human instruments cannot measure the full reality of what is going on beneath the surface, well, that brings us straight into the sources we are looking at for this deep dive.
It really sets the stage.
It does. Picture this. You've got a guy who is paralyzed by his own inadequacy. He is standing in front of a burning bush in the middle of nowhere, raising a highly logical objection to God.
Right, he is giving excuses.
Yeah. He says, they will not believe me. And God does not give him a psychological pep talk. He does not hand him a slick marketing strategy to go win over the crowds.
Oh, not at all.
God answers with undeniable, awe-inspiring, and frankly terrifying signs. So we're looking at Exodus chapter 4, specifically verses 6 through 9. And the theological treatments of this text pull back the curtain on some staggering realities about human strength, worldly empires, and how God validates a messenger.
To grasp the sheer weight of what God is doing here, we have to pull ourselves out of the modern mindset.
Yeah.
We really have to ground ourselves in the historical reality of this specific moment.
Which is when, exactly? Or I should say, roughly when.
We are situated around 1446 BC. This is during the 18th dynasty of Egypt's New Kingdom.
Okay, so a very specific era.
Yes. And you have to understand, this is not a struggling nation trying to find its footing on the world stage. This is the absolute zenith of Egyptian military, economic, and architectural might.
Wow.
We are talking about undefeated chariot armies that struck fear into the entire known world. We are talking about colossal temple complexes, massive store cities, and a culture that views its pharaoh not just as a king, but as a living, breathing god who controls the cosmic order.
And then you look at the guy God tapped for the job.
Yeah, the contrast is stark.
It is almost comical, really. You have Moses. Sure, decades prior, he was trained in the highest wisdom of the Egyptians. He was a prince.
He had all the status.
Right, he walked the halls of those colossal temples. But right now, in this text, he is a nobody. He has spent 40 years in total obscurity, wandering as a shepherd in Midian.
Which is a huge detail.
And from what I understand, the Egyptians did not just look down on shepherds, they actively despised them, right?
Oh, it was an absolute abomination to them. The Egyptians were an agricultural society centered on the Nile, and they viewed nomadic shepherds as unclean, barbaric, and just socially repulsive.
So Moses is basically at the bottom of the social ladder.
Precisely. That is a crucial detail for you, the listener, to keep in mind. Look at where God confronts Moses. It is at Horeb, known as the Mountain of God.
But Horeb is not some grand cathedral.
No, it is silent. It is barren rock. It is miles and miles away from the bustling, wealthy, loud structures of the Nile Valley.
So far removed from anything impressive.
Yes. Moses has been systematically stripped of every single external advantage he once possessed. He has no political connections left. He has no army. He has no wealth.
Just a stick and some sheep.
Right. He's an aging, hesitant man, entirely cut off from the centers of human influence.
It is crazy when you stop and look at the timeline. God lets his people suffer in the iron furnace of Egypt for 4 centuries.
400 years.
And he allows his chosen mediator, Moses, to age into absolute obscurity before initiating the rescue. I have to admit, reading that, it feels incredibly inefficient.
It does look that way from our perspective.
I mean, why wait? If you are going to save your people, why let Moses lose all his worldly influence first? Why wait until the Israelites are utterly crushed?
Well, think about the alternative. Because if Moses marched in as a strong, wealthy prince of Egypt and negotiated their release, what would the history books say?
That he was a great politician.
Exactly. They would say Moses was a clever diplomat. If the Israelites rose up while they still had some fight left in them, it would be recorded as a successful slave revolt.
Ah, I see.
By waiting until the Israelites are utterly broken and Moses is completely marginalized, God ensures that the deliverance cannot be attributed to human effort. It proves that the ensuing rescue is a monergistic divine act.
Monergistic meaning one working?
Yes, monergism, one worker, God alone. No human flesh will glory in his presence. It is all God's action, zero man's contribution.
That takes all the credit away from humanity.
Completely. And God is acting strictly based on the Abrahamic covenant, established back in Genesis 15. The rescue of Israel is not some generic humanitarian response to an oppressed ethnic group.
Right. It is highly specific.
It is a covenantal obligation that God placed upon himself to secure a distinct people and a specific land for his own glory.
I am just trying to put myself in Moses' sandals for a second.
It is a terrifying place to be.
Seriously, if I am him, stripped of all my princely stature, my eloquence is gone, I am stammering, I smell like sheep. I mean, how jarring is it that God uses my lowest point of personal inadequacy to launch an assault on the greatest empire on earth?
You would feel completely unqualified.
I would be looking around for the hidden cameras like, is this a joke?
It shatters every single assumption Moses has about how authority works in the real world. Moses is calculating his odds based on human metrics.
Which makes sense.
It does. He knows Pharaoh, he knows the Egyptian court, he knows the military layout, and he knows his own stuttering tongue.
So he does the math.
Right. So his fear, his objection of, they will not believe me, that is entirely rational from a naturalistic perspective.
But God does not care about naturalistic perspectives.
No. God does not operate on human metrics. God is forcing Moses to realize that the success of the mission relies entirely on the sender, not the messenger.
Which brings us to the first sign. God tells Moses to do something that seems pretty bizarre at first glance.
Very strange.
In verses 6 and 7, God commands Moses to put his hand into his bosom. When he takes it out, the text says the hand is leprous as snow.
A horrifying sight.
Yeah. Then God tells him to do it again, and when he pulls it out the second time, the hand is completely restored. It is whole, just like his other flesh. What is going on here? Why leprosy? Why not just make his hand glow or make it super strong?
The Hebrew syntax here is incredibly specific and heavily symbolic. The word used for hand is yad. In biblical literature, the hand is the primary symbol of human agency.
Okay, agency.
Yes. It is the instrument of labor, action, control, and human strength. Then, the word for bosom, or the fold of the cloak near the chest, is hake. This represents the hidden internal heart.
The inner life.
Right. The secret desires, the inner nature of the man.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You put your agency, your strength, right up next to your hidden internal nature.
Yes, and what is the result? The text says it becomes metzora at kashalek, leprous as snow.
Which is bad.
This is not just a mild rash. In the context of the ancient Near East and later codified in Leviticus 13, this specific kind of skin disease indicates a total, blinding, ceremonial defilement.
Total defilement.
It represented a state of symbolic death.
Yeah.
A leper was excluded from the camp of Israel, cut off from worship, cut off from community.
So it is social and spiritual isolation.
Yes. Theologically, God is giving Moses a terrifying visual aid. He's demonstrating that Moses' internal heart is a source of death.
Wow.
The very hand Moses might try to use to deliver Israel by his own natural strength is morally bankrupt.
Let me make sure I am tracking with you here. Moses puts his hand, his ability to do stuff, his agency, near his heart, and it comes out as pure corruption.
Pure corruption.
So if he goes down to Egypt and tries to save the Israelites using his own wisdom, his own strength, his own inherent goodness, he is just going to infect everything he touches.
Precisely. And if you trace the history, Moses actually tried that 40 years earlier.
Oh, that is right. The Egyptian he killed.
Yes. He tried to deliver an Israelite by his own strength, struck an Egyptian, and had to flee for his life. His own agency brought death. This sign forces him to visually confront his own depravity.
Think of trying to clean a pristine glass window with a rag that is absolutely soaked in thick, wet mud.
That is a great image.
You are scrubbing and scrubbing, hoping to make the glass clear, but because the rag itself is compromised, you are just smearing filth everywhere. Moses' hand, the instrument meant to save Israel, is the very source of the defilement.
That analogy captures the essence of human moral effort perfectly. And look at what happens next. Moses does not heal himself. He cannot.
He is helpless.
He cannot apply a salve. He cannot perform a medical procedure. He cannot just think positive thoughts to clean the leprosy. He simply obeys the divine command to put his hand back into his cloak, and God unilaterally restores it.
So he is completely stuck unless God acts. Wait, if his hand is diseased by his own heart and he cannot fix it himself, this seems to take a massive swing at the idea that humans can sort of partner with God to save themselves.
Oh, it absolutely
Like
does.
that idea where God does his part, we do our part, we meet in the middle.
It completely dismantles that idea.
Yeah.
Throughout church history, you see systems of thought that try to elevate human ability.
Like what?
Well, you have Pelagianism, which argues that man is fundamentally fine, just a blank slate,
Yeah.
and just needs good moral instruction.
Just needs a good teacher.
Right. Then you have systems like Arminianism, which might admit man is sick, but insists he still retains the inherent ability to reach out and cooperate with God's grace to effect his own salvation.
But a leprous hand cannot heal itself.
Exactly. The human condition is not just a little bit flawed. It is spiritually dead and defiled. The disease is progressive and fatal.
There is no middle ground.
None. Moses cooperating with his own cleansing is physically impossible. The restoration of his flesh requires a unilateral, sovereign command from the Creator. The cleansing is an act of pure, unmerited, sovereign intervention.
I cannot imagine the shock of that moment. God literally forces Moses to look at his own decaying flesh.
It had to be traumatic.
How does this act as a mirror for the audience that Moses is eventually going to show this to? I mean, the wilderness generation was not known for their stellar moral track record.
They certainly were not. The wilderness generation was constantly prone to grumbling, to idolatry, to longing for the leeks and onions of Egypt.
They complained about everything.
They frequently believed they deserved better treatment from God, complaining that God had brought them out to the desert to die. But this sign, which Moses performs in their sight, forces them to confront their true spiritual state.
It holds up a mirror.
Yes. If their great mediator, the man who spoke to God from the burning bush, possessed a heart that produced defilement and death, then the entire nation has to recognize their own absolute moral bankruptcy.
Right. They cannot sit there and think, well, God picked us because we are the best, most righteous people in the ancient Near East.
No, they cannot. They were not chosen because of intrinsic righteousness. They were chosen by pure, sovereign grace, and this sign visibly proved it to them.
Okay, that brings up something really fascinating about these miracles. God does not just do magic tricks to show off.
No, he does not.
The text says something really specific in verse 8. It introduces this conditional logic. It says, if they will not believe thee, neither hearken to the voice of the first sign, they will believe the voice of the latter sign.
Yes, the voice of the sign.
Notice that phrasing. Miracles do not have vocal cords. What does it mean that a sign has a voice?
In Hebrew, the phrase is kol hot, and you hit the nail on the head. Miracles in the biblical record are never mute spectacles.
They speak.
They are never random magic tricks meant to simply dazzle an audience or draw a crowd. They carry a distinct voice, meaning they are inextricably linked to authoritative propositional truth.
The message is the point.
Yes, the sign exists strictly to authenticate the spoken message of the prophet.
But wait, did Jesus and the prophets not just do miracles because they felt bad for people? Does God not just use miracles to relieve suffering out of compassion?
Compassion is a factor, yes.
Are you saying miracles are only for validating a message?
Well, compassion is certainly present, but if the primary goal of miracles was simply the relief of general human suffering, then Jesus would have healed every single sick person in the Roman Empire.
Right, he could have healed everyone.
But he did not. He healed specific people in specific ways at specific times. Why? Because the miracles were concentrated, redemptive historical markers.
So they marked specific moments in history.
Yes. The sources we are analyzing place this heavily within a theological framework that pushes back against the constant craving for modern signs and wonders.
So you are getting into the debate over whether miraculous signs are still happening the same way today.
Yes. When God initiates a new epoch of revelation, like giving the law through Moses, or inaugurating the new covenant through Christ and the apostles, he validates that new authoritative word with signs.
The signs prove the word is from God.
The miracles are the divine signature on the document. But once that era of revelation is established, once the canon of Scripture is closed, the need for those specific foundational validating signs ceases.
It is like looking at a royal seal on a king's decree. The wax seal is visually impressive, sure.
It looks official.
Yeah, the intricate design pressed into the bright red wax is meant to catch your eye. It proves the letter is authentic. But the wax seal only exists to validate the text written on the parchment.
Exactly.
If you sit around craving miracles today while ignoring the written word, it is like admiring the wax seal while throwing the king's actual letter directly into the fire.
That is a phenomenal way to picture it. If you isolate the sign from the word, you turn the miracle into an idol.
Oh, wow, an idol.
The Israelites were commanded to heed the voice of the sign, which meant listening to Moses as the authoritative lawgiver and mediator. The sign was the authentication of his office.
It pointed to his authority.
Once the office of the apostles was validated in the first century, and the scriptures were completed, we do not need new seals. We have the document. We need to read the document.
That makes a lot of sense, but it also feels like a massive critique of how a lot of modern churches operate.
It is a critique, absolutely.
If the text explicitly states that these signs have a voice, an authoritative message, and yet the Israelites saw them and still rebelled later on, I mean, they saw the Red Sea part and then built a golden calf a few weeks later.
They did.
What does that say about the modern church's craving for entertainment-driven, pragmatic methods to win people over? We see so much effort put into making the Sunday experience a spectacular event, under the assumption that if people just see something amazing, they will believe.
It exposes the absolute futility of pragmatism. The seeker-sensitive model often operates on the assumption that the human problem is just a lack of engagement.
Like we are just bored.
Right. If we just make the presentation more relevant, if we have better music, better lighting, or if people could just witness a verifiable miracle, then their hearts would soften and change.
But that is not true.
The biblical record destroys that theory. The Israelites saw the Nile turn to blood. They saw fire fall from heaven. They walked through a sea on dry ground, and their hearts remained hard.
Because external spectacles cannot cure internal rebellion.
Exactly. The leper's hand proved the heart is corrupt. You cannot fix a corrupt heart by entertaining the eyes. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God.
So pragmatism fails.
Pragmatic methods appeal to the flesh, but they cannot perform the supernatural regeneration required to actually change a human heart. That requires the Holy Spirit working to the truth of the word.
Okay, let us keep moving through the text, because while the first signs dealt with internal corruption and this necessity of belief, the final sign God gives Moses escalates the conflict entirely.
It steps up the intensity.
We move from Moses' personal body, his hand and his staff, to the physical environment of the Egyptian empire. Verse 9 gives this ultimate warning. If they still do not believe, Moses is to take water from the river and pour it upon the dry land, where it will become blood.
Yes, the river.
Break this down for us, because the vocabulary here is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
It really is loaded with meaning. The word used for the river is hay. This is not a generic Hebrew word for a stream. It is an Egyptian loan word specifically denoting the Nile.
The Nile.
We have to understand what the Nile was. It was the agricultural, economic, and religious lifeline of the nation. It was actively worshipped. They believed the river was the life-giving blood of the god Hapi.
So it was not just a body of water. To put it in modern terms, the Nile was Wall Street, the Pentagon, and the Vatican all rolled into one single river for ancient Egypt.
That is a great summary.
It controlled their money, their security, and their souls.
Yes. And then you look at the phrase for dry ground, which in Hebrew is hayabashah. This is not a random choice of words.
What does it connect to?
This is a direct lexical link to Genesis 1:9, where God gathered the waters to let the dry land, hayabashah, appear during the creation of the world.
Oh, wow. So God is taking the god of Egypt and crushing it against the canvas of his own creation.
Yeah.
He is saying, you worship this river. Watch what the creator of the dry land can do to it.
It is a staggering display of judicial decreation. The Lord is actively unmaking the order of Egypt. Pharaoh's entire authority rested on his claim to maintain cosmic order, a concept the Egyptians called Ma'at.
Cosmic order.
The regular, predictable flooding of the Nile was the primary evidence of that order. By taking their premier natural resource and turning it to blood, Yahweh is demonstrating absolute, sovereign judicial dominion.
He is dismantling their reality.
He is mocking the Egyptian pantheon, dismantling their cosmology, and proving that he alone controls the elements.
I have a mechanical question about how this miracle works. Why must Moses pour the water out onto the dry ground for the sign to happen?
That is a good question.
Why not just change the water while it is still hidden inside a clay jar or a vessel? He could scoop it up, hold it out, and say, look inside.
Because biblical judgment is public and visible. The dry ground, Hayabashah, receives the blood as a public testimony.
It cannot be hidden.
If it happened inside a jar, it could be concealed. Pharaoh's magicians could explain it away as a trick of the light or a hidden dye inside the clay.
They would just make an excuse.
But poured out on the dry earth, where it stains the ground and everyone can see it, it is undeniable. The lifeblood of Egypt is transformed into a stark symbol of death.
A warning shot.
And it acts as a prophetic preview of the first actual plague, where the entire river will be struck. It is God putting Egypt on official notice.
There is a really terrifying detail here that I almost missed. With the first sign, the leprous hand, God said, put it back in your cloak, and it was healed.
Right, restoration.
When Moses threw his staff down and it became a snake, God told him to pick it up by the tail, and it became a staff again. But with the water turned to blood on the dry ground, well, there is no command to reverse the sign.
You caught that. The hand was restored. The staff was restored. But the blood remains on the dry ground. What does that tell you?
It sounds permanent.
It signals that the final state of pagan rebellion is unmitigated, irreversible condemnation. God's patience has a limit. He gives warnings. He provides authenticating signs.
But the limit is real.
But when the final judgment falls upon the idolatrous systems of the world, it is final. There is no reversing it.
That is a heavy, heavy reality. But I want to pivot slightly, because if we stop here, we are just talking about ancient history and judgment.
Yes, we have to move forward.
Every single one of these physical actions and signs in the Old Covenant is an intricate signpost pointing forward. If we take our cues from the New Testament, specifically Luke 24, Jesus tells the disciples that all the scriptures point to him.
The whole book is about him.
The entire narrative has to be viewed through its fulfillment in Jesus Christ. Moses is a historic type, a shadow, but Jesus is the superior prophet, priest, and king.
And the contrast between Moses and Jesus is breathtaking when you align the narrative side by side.
Walk us through that.
Think back to the first sign. When Moses puts his hand into his bosom, he contracts defilement and symbolic death. Why? Because he is a fallen son of Adam. He is subject to corruption.
So he catches the disease.
He needs an external remedy for his own disease.
Right, he is a carrier of the disease. But then you flip to the New Testament. Let us look at Matthew chapter 8. Jesus comes down from the mountain, and he is confronted by a desperate leper.
Yes, and according to the Levitical law we discussed earlier, touching a leper should make Jesus ceremonially unclean.
The dirt makes the clean thing dirty.
The law says the unclean defiles the clean. But what happens in Matthew 8.3? Jesus stretches out his hand, his yod, his agency, and touches the man.
And Jesus does not catch the leprosy. He does not contract ceremonial uncleanness.
Not at all.
Instead, the exact opposite happens. His absolute active holiness surges outward, driving the disease out of the man.
It flips the entire dynamic of purity laws on its head. Moses' hand becomes leprous because of his internal state. Christ's hand is an active source of life because of his intrinsic divine purity.
It is a one-way street of holiness.
His holiness is so absolute that it obliterates the uncleanness. He does not need an external cleansing like Moses did. He is the source of the cleansing.
That shifts how we read everything. If you read the Exodus story just to find leadership principles from Moses, like 5 ways Moses handled stress at the burning bush, you are missing the entire point.
You're reading the wrong book if you do that.
Moses is not the hero. He is a flawed, leprous instrument. God is the hero, and Christ is the fulfillment. Look at the trajectory of their respective ministries. Compare the very first public miracles of Moses and Jesus.
Let us draw that out. Moses' first public sign in Egypt, the first plague, brings death, ruin, and a literal stench to a rebellious nation by turning the life-giving water of the Nile into blood. It is a perfect, terrifying representation of the ministry of the law. The law is a ministry of condemnation. It exposes sin, it demands righteousness, and it brings wrath when that righteousness is not met.
Now look at Christ's first public miracle. We see it in the Gospel of John. At the wedding in Cana of Galilee, Jesus goes to a celebration. They run out of wine.
Yes.
And what does Jesus do? He takes water, and specifically the text notes, it was water held in stone jars, meant for Jewish purification rites, the water of the law, and he turns it into abundant sweet wine.
Moses begins his ministry with blood and judgment. Jesus begins his public ministry with wine and celebration.
It is a complete reversal.
The water of purification becomes the wine of the new covenant. As John's gospel says, the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ.
Think about the imagery of the blood itself, the blood of the Nile compared with the blood of Calvary.
Let's at the contrast.
The blood of Egypt was poured out on the dry ground as a sign of divine wrath. It was a curse upon the oppressors. But the precious blood of Jesus Christ, poured out on the dry, rocky ground of Golgotha, is the remedy.
The ultimate cure.
It is the ultimate cure that cleanses our leprous hearts from the guilt of sin. Both narratives involve blood poured out on the dry earth, but one is an irreversible curse, and the other is the cure that satisfies God's wrath.
That is the pinnacle of this imagery, the substitutionary atonement. The judgment that was meant for us, the wrath that should have turned our own rivers to blood because of our secret hidden sins, was absorbed by Christ on the cross.
He took the hit.
His blood satisfies the righteous judicial wrath of God, securing redemption for his people once and for all.
So seeing this massive theological reality completely alters how you, the listener, must apply this text to your life today. We are not just learning ancient Near Eastern history here, we are confronting the living God.
Yes, it is intensely practical.
And the text makes demands of us. It demands a rejection of our own pragmatism, a sober examination of our secret sins, and an unyielding boldness in the face of modern secularism.
We have to begin with radical repentance from our own self-righteousness and human moralism. Just as Moses had to put his hand into his cloak and see the horrifying reality of his own corruption, every single person must recognize that their best self-generated deeds are defiled by sin.
We cannot clean ourselves.
You have to stop trying to clean yourself through your own effort. You cannot scrub the muddy window clean with a muddy rag. You must fall flat before the regenerating grace of the Holy Spirit.
Consider what you keep hidden near your chest, inside your cloak, where no one else can see.
We all have them.
We all have that space. Secret bitterness, lust, theological pride, or hypocrisy might be concealed from society. You might look perfectly put together at church. You might be crushing it at work.
But God sees it.
But those things are completely, totally open before God. He can expose in an instant what you have disguised for decades.
That is a terrifying reality, but it is necessary to face it. The hidden things belong to the Lord, and he will bring every secret thing into judgment.
So what is the application?
The application here is not to just feel guilty. The application is to run to Christ for cleansing before that hidden corruption is exposed in irreversible judgment.
And we also have to look at the modern applications regarding fear. You look around, and the church today faces intense pressure. We are surrounded by aggressive pluralism, hostile secular philosophies, and academic pride.
The modern Niles.
These are the Niles of the modern world, and honestly, they seem insurmountable. They control the culture, they control the economy, they control the flow of information. It is easy to feel like Moses standing in the desert looking at the monolithic power of Egypt and thinking, well, we are completely outmatched.
But Exodus 4.9 proves that modern empires are dust in the hands of the Creator.
Dust?
If he can take the actual Nile, the geographic god of the ancient world, and turn it into a river of death with a single word, then the philosophical and political Niles of our day are absolutely nothing to him.
They are powerless.
The church has to reclaim this boldness. We do not need to accommodate the culture. We do not need to water down the gospel to make it palatable to the modern Egyptian mindset. We proclaim the sovereign Lord who holds the breath of every human ruler in his hand.
The fear of man is a snare. You might feel like Moses right now. You might feel hesitant. You might feel weak, fearing that your instruction to your kids is falling flat, or that your witness to a coworker is totally inadequate.
You might feel useless.
You stammer, you forget the right Bible verses, you do not have a theology degree, you feel unqualified. But this text proves that your personal inadequacy is not the final word. In fact, your inadequacy is the very canvas God uses to display his sovereignty.
God deliberately chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. He bypassed the generals and the wealthy elite and chose an aged, stuttering shepherd to confront Pharaoh.
It is by design.
Your inadequacy is actually a prerequisite for being used by God, because it ensures that when the victory comes, the glory goes to him alone. He does not need your strength. He requires you to rest entirely upon the authority of his word.
I want to leave you with a specific, lingering image to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive. Think about that dry ground where Moses poured out the blood.
The dry land.
The text links this to the creation of the dry land in Genesis, but as we talked about, it casts a long shadow forward to the dry, rocky hill of Golgotha. If the sovereign creator can take the absolute lifeblood of a tyrannical empire and pour it out into the dirt as an irreversible judgment, well, ask yourself, what idolatrous false refuges are you clinging to?
What are your Niles?
What are the modern Niles in your own life? What status, what hidden sin, what source of worldly security are you trusting in that God is demanding you pour out upon the dry ground today?